Some people say they hear voices when no one else is around. A quarter of all Americans alone have heard voices that seem to come from outside of their body at least once in their life. And 1 in 10 people will hear these voices more than once. But for most of them, this isn't because of some underlying mental disorder or physical illness. Now, doctors have been able to identify what causes auditory hallucinations in about 2/3 of cases, but the source of the voices in the remaining third of people remains a complete mystery. So let's tune into the strange origins of hearing voices. There are lots of ways that people can hear voices that aren't really there. People with schizophrenia may hear voices as a symptom of their disease. Sometimes brain tumors, dementia, and epilepsy can cause people to hear things that aren't there. And even certain types of strokes can make you hear voices as a kind of phantom noise. Psychiatric disorders are the most common reason that people report hearing voices. But psychiatric disorders are only one piece of the puzzle because many people who hear voices don't have any identifiable psychiatric disorder. A recent study by an international team of researchers sought to determine the prevalence of auditory hallucinations in a large sample of people who didn't have an obvious cause. They took a random sample of nearly 60,000 people between the ages of 45 and 75 from the UK and Ireland and asked them whether they'd ever heard voices when no one was around. Nearly 12% said yes. The researchers also gave everyone a cognitive test and used brain imaging techniques called EEG and MRI to look for possible sources of the auditory hallucinations. Now, the people who reported hearing voices were divided into 2 groups. One group, which we'll call the HV group for hallucination voices, were people who regularly heard clear, well-formed sentences spoken by one or more distinct voices. The other group, which we'll call the VH group for voice hearing, had a less consistent experience. Their voices weren't necessarily speaking in full sentences, and they might have been accompanied by sounds like music or animal noises. The scientists wanted to find out if the VH group were having actual hallucinations, or if they just had a different experience that we would call a hallucination, but that could be explained by something else. To get to the bottom of this, they compared the experiences of the 2 groups to see how much of a difference there really was. People in the VH group were much more likely to report hearing the voices alongside other kinds of noises. And unlike the HV group, they were more likely to say that the voices were coming from inside their own head. This suggests that the VH group was experiencing a kind of auditory processing disorder rather than actual auditory hallucinations. The HV group, on the other hand, was more likely to report hearing the voices coming from outside their bodies. And those voices were often accompanied by an experience of pressure in the ear, ringing in the ears, or even pain. These folks were also more likely to report anxiety or depression. So while both groups were hearing things that weren't actually there, the HV group was definitely having hallucinations, whereas the VH group was not. But this still leaves us with a lot of unanswered questions about the origin of those hallucinations. To learn more about that, the researchers analyzed the brain activity and structure of the participants using EEG and MRI scans. Using a combination of both scanning methods, they found significant differences between the brains of the HV group and the VH group. The biggest difference between the 2 groups was in the amount of activity in a region of the brain called the superior temporal gyrus. This area is involved in processing speech and is one of several regions that have been implicated in auditory hallucinations before. But this is the first time that a difference in brain activity has been linked to the specific type of auditory hallucination that comes with distinct voices speaking in full sentences. Another key difference between the 2 groups was the amount of white matter connecting the right side of the brain to the left side. White matter is made up of nerve fibers that connect different parts of the brain and allow them to communicate. And it looks white because myelin, a fatty substance that surrounds the nerve fibers, makes it appear bright in MRI scans. The researchers believe that the difference in white matter between the 2 groups might mean that the left side of the brain is ineffectively communicating with the right side, leading to the kinds of auditory hallucinations that people in the HV group experienced. Interestingly, the difference in white matter was in the same location as lesions that have been shown to cause hallucinations in prior research. But until now, no one knew exactly where those lesions were affecting to cause hallucinations, nor did we know if hearing voices was a symptom of damage to the connections between the left and right hemispheres, or if it was caused by problems within the superior temporal gyrus. This new study suggests that it's both. So, while this research does not answer the question of why some people experience these kinds of auditory hallucinations, it does tell us more about the pathway that the sound takes through the brain to get there. Hearing a voice that isn't really there has been described as one of the most frightening experiences imaginable, especially when it comes with the sense that the voice is coming from outside of your body. And this sensation of external presence can be accompanied by delusions, paranoia, and other symptoms that make it hard to distinguish reality from imagination. But there's a lot that we still don't understand about what causes these kinds of auditory hallucinations, and it seems likely that they're caused by a combination of genetic and environmental factors. In fact, a separate study published earlier this year suggests that genetics play a role in the development of auditory hallucinations. By looking at the relatives of people who hear voices, researchers from Australia and Denmark found that having a family member who also hears voices increases your risk of developing the ability to hear voices as well. It appears to be a heritable trait. And similar patterns have been found for other psychotic symptoms like delusions and disorganized thinking. But there's a huge gap between knowing that there is a genetic component to this trait and identifying the genes responsible. We do know that genes are only part of the story. Researchers have proposed that stress is also a major contributor to the onset of auditory hallucinations, but it's not clear how exactly stress causes them. In fact, we don't even know exactly what causes auditory hallucinations in people who have psychiatric disorders. Some researchers think it's the disorder itself causing the auditory hallucinations, while others believe that it's a response to stress. So, more work needs to be done to tease apart the relative contributions of genetics and environment to the development of auditory hallucinations. Still, the sheer number of people who hear voices and the distress that this can cause means that this is an important phenomenon to study. It could turn out to be an early warning sign of a psychiatric disorder that requires treatment. Or maybe it's a sign of an environmental factor that can be mitigated. Either way, hearing voices is a big deal, and it deserves our attention. Thank you for watching this episode, which was brought to you with the help of our patrons. If you'd like to help us make more videos about mysterious medical conditions, you can go to our support page to learn more. Did you know that some sand dunes in the desert sing? The sound is so eerie and haunting that it's been compared to the cries of a banshee or the song of a siren. But what's really going on here? And why should you care? These singing sand dunes are located in places like the Sahara Desert and the Namib Desert, but they can also be found right here in the United States in the surprisingly musical state of Utah. In the remote Badlands of the southeast corner of the state, you can find the aptly named Sand Mountain, a massive dune over 200 feet tall. The mountain gets its name from the fact that the wind constantly shapes it into new forms, just like a gigantic sand sculpture. But once in a while, it emits an eerie humming sound. When people first started hearing the sound coming from this strange mountain, they assumed that there was some sort of creature living inside of it that was making the noise. Perhaps a large animal like a bear or a bison. But when scientists came to investigate, all they found were some harmless little lizards and a lot of creepy silence. So where did the sound come from? Well, according to researchers, the sound is caused by vibrations in the sand as it cascades down the face of the dune. As the top layer of sand shifts, it causes the grains beneath it to vibrate, which generates a low-frequency sound wave that can be picked up by sensitive microphones. Basically, it's just a bunch of tiny little avalanches happening all over the surface of the dune at different rates. And just like waves crashing into the shore, these avalanches generate their own unique rhythm that creates a haunting song. In fact, scientists have even found that each individual grain of sand makes its own unique sound. They have their own little voice. Scientists don't fully understand what exactly causes the vibrations to turn into such haunting songs, but they think it has something to do with the shape and size of the grains of sand. When scientists shake dry sand in a container, it makes a similar sound to the singing sand dunes. And experiments show that the size and shape of the sand grains play a big role in the sound they make. For example, well-rounded grains of quartz produce a higher-pitched sound than angular grains of feldspar. But there is another important factor that influences the sound of the sand: the moisture level. When sand is completely dry, it doesn't make much noise at all. But when even a small amount of water is present, it amplifies the sound dramatically. That's because water helps the grains of sand stick together. So when they slide past each other, they create more friction, which generates more sound. But too much water can actually dampen the sound. That's why you don't hear any singing coming from beaches along the ocean. There's just way too much moisture present. The optimal amount of water for singing sand is a very narrow range. There needs to be just enough moisture to help the grains of sand stick together, but not so much that it dampens the sound. That's a delicate balance. Scientists believe that the amount of water present in the sand plays a big role in how loud the singing sand dunes can get. But we still don't know exactly how this works. It's one of the things that scientists are trying to figure out. But there is another big mystery surrounding the singing sand dunes, and that is how the sound travels through the air. According to researchers, the sound generated by the sliding sand grains is very low frequency, even lower than the lowest note on a piano. These low-frequency sound waves travel differently than the sounds we are used to hearing. They don't just move through the air like dominoes passing on vibrations to the next molecule. They actually cause the air molecules to resonate. This means that the sound can travel much further than you would expect. In fact, there have been cases of people hearing the song of the singing sand dunes several miles away. Imagine being in your tent late at night and you start hearing this haunting melody coming from far off in the distance. It would be terrifying. But researchers aren't exactly sure how far the sound can travel. They believe that it depends on a number of factors, including the size of the dune and the amount of moisture present in the sand. More research is needed to better understand this phenomenon. But there is one last piece of the puzzle that scientists are still trying to put into place, and that is how all of these factors work together to create the sound. We still don't fully understand the physics behind the singing sand dunes. Why do the grains of sand make their own unique sounds? How does the moisture level influence the volume of the sound? And how far can the sound travel before it dissipates into nothingness? These are the questions that scientists are trying to answer as they continue to study the mysterious singing sand dunes of Utah and other parts of the world. There are still so many unanswered questions about the natural world that it's hard to know where to start. Luckily, there is an organization dedicated to helping people explore the wonders of science. They offer online courses, live webinars, and other resources to help people learn about the world around them. Whether you want to brush up on your knowledge of physics or learn something completely new, they have something for everyone. And it's all free. One of the things I love most about Brilliant is their interactive courses. Instead of just listening to someone lecture you about a topic, Brilliant courses are designed to be hands-on and engaging. You can learn by doing with interactive visualizations and follow-up questions that help you check your understanding along the way. This helps you learn more effectively and retain the information you need to know. Plus, it's just plain fun to learn with Brilliant. They offer courses on a variety of topics in science, computer science, and math, so there is something for everyone. And if you're looking for a fun and engaging way to learn, I highly recommend checking them out. You might be wondering what all of this has to do with singing sand dunes. Well, dunes may not seem like an important topic, but they are actually a critical part of our planet's ecosystems. They protect coastal communities from storms, provide habitat for plants and animals, and even help regulate the global climate. By understanding how dunes form and evolve, we can better protect them and the valuable ecosystem services they provide. Plus, it's just fascinating to learn about the natural world around us. Who knows, you might even discover a new passion for science. But now, let's get back to those creepy singing sand dunes. So, if you ever find yourself camping out in the desert, be sure to keep an ear out for any haunting melodies drifting across the dunes. You never know what you might hear. Now leave a comment below with your ideas for topics that we should cover in the future. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you never miss an exciting episode. Thanks for watching. The Lykov family. A Russian family survived in the Siberian wilderness for 40 years, cut off from all human contact. This is proof that humans can vanish into the world and still endure. Deep in the remote regions of Siberia, where towering trees blanket the landscape and wildlife roams free, there's a tale of survival that will astound you. A Russian family who vanished from society for over 4 decades, living in complete isolation and shunning all forms of modern civilization. Their story raises profound questions about human resilience, societal norms, and the lengths one family went to preserve their way of life. In the heart of this untouched wilderness, a wooden house stood as a testament to their extraordinary journey. It was here that the Lykov family eked out an existence untouched by the passage of time. How did they manage to survive for so long without any supplies? What challenges did they face, and how did they adapt? Let's find out more about the amazing Lykov family. When the Lykov family first arrived in the area, they were greeted by a vast expanse of wild nature. Towering trees formed a dense canopy overhead, filtering the sunlight that dappled the forest floor. The air was filled with the sounds of birdsong and the rustling of small animals as they went about their daily routines. The family wasted no time in getting to work, setting about the task of building their new home. Using their knowledge of traditional construction methods, they erected a sturdy wooden structure that would serve as their shelter. As the walls went up, so did their hopes for a new life away from the prying eyes of society. But it wasn't just a home they needed. They also had to learn to survive in this challenging environment. This meant hunting wild animals for food, fishing in nearby rivers, and gathering wild plants and berries. These were the staples that sustained them through the harsh winters and long, dark nights. The family worked tirelessly to build a sustainable lifestyle. Over time, they cleared some land and planted crops, raising livestock to provide them with meat and dairy products. Slowly but surely, they carved out a life of self-sufficiency and independence. As the years passed, the Lykov family became one with the wilderness around them. They developed a deep understanding of the rhythms of nature, learning which plants were edible, which animals were safe to hunt, and how to navigate the changing seasons. Their children were born and raised in this idyllic setting, growing up with a profound connection to the natural world. They learned the skills necessary to thrive in this environment from an early age, ensuring the continuation of their family's traditions. Their days were filled with purposeful activities. The men of the family spent their time hunting, trapping, and fishing, while the women took care of the livestock, gathered wild berries and herbs, and processed the family's food. Every member of the family had an important role to play, and they worked together harmoniously to ensure their survival. Evenings were spent sharing stories, singing songs, and playing traditional Russian games. The warmth of family bonds sustained them through the long, cold nights, reminding them of the strength that lay in their unity. As the family grew, so did their need for resources. They expanded their crops, built additional structures, and developed more efficient ways of living. All the while, they remained deeply connected to the land, respecting its bounty and preserving its beauty. But their story takes a turn when we hear about the youngest son's venture outside their settlement. Curiosity, and perhaps a longing for something beyond their secluded life, drove him to explore the world outside. After spending most of his life within the confines of their secluded settlement, Dmitri decided to venture beyond the familiar landscape. The outside world beckoned with an allure that was hard to resist, promising a life vastly different from the one he'd always known. With a mix of apprehension and excitement, he set out on his journey, leaving behind the only life he'd ever known. As Dmitri ventured further, the landscape began to change. The towering trees thinned, revealing rolling hills and open fields. The sound of birdsong was replaced by the hum of insects and the distant call of unfamiliar animals. Each step he took was a new discovery, a chance to experience the world in all its wonder and diversity. He encountered people who had never heard of the Lykov family or their way of life. Their interactions left Dmitri with a mixture of emotions, a sense of alienation, but also a thirst for knowledge about the world outside their settlement. Dmitri's journey was not without its challenges. He faced hunger, fatigue, and the constant threat of wild animals. But his determination to explore kept him moving forward. Along the way, he learned valuable lessons about resilience, adaptability, and the kindness of strangers. After a long and arduous journey, Dmitri finally returned home. The familiar sight of his family's wooden house brought a wave of relief and joy. As he shared his experiences with his family, they listened with a mix of awe and concern. Dmitri's tales of the outside world sparked a mix of emotions within the family. While they reveled in their son's adventurous spirit, they couldn't help but worry about the dangers he'd faced. Upon his return, Dmitri shared everything he'd seen, heard, and experienced. His stories painted a vivid picture of a world that was both fascinating and dangerous. The rest of the family listened intently, their imaginations running wild as they tried to comprehend the vastness of the outside world. As Dmitri spoke, his family saw a glimpse of the world beyond their secluded life. They learned about bustling cities, advanced technologies, and different cultures. It was a world that seemed almost surreal to them, a stark contrast to their own simple existence. Despite the differences, they felt a sense of connection to the wider world, realizing they were part of something bigger. Dmitri's journey had a profound impact on the family. It opened their eyes to the possibilities that existed beyond their settlement, while also reinforcing the importance of their unique way of life. They realized the value of their close-knit community, their deep connection to nature, and their commitment to living in harmony with the land. And now let's get back to the video. Dmitri's foray into the outside world left an indelible mark on the family. It sparked conversations about their secluded existence and the wider world they'd chosen to shun. As they shared their thoughts, they grappled with the complexities of their situation. On one hand, they cherished their way of life. They valued their freedom from societal norms, their deep connection to nature, and the simplicity of their existence. On the other hand, they couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond their settlement. The allure of the outside world, with its advancements and possibilities, was hard to ignore. Despite these internal discussions, the family remained resolute in their decision to continue living in their secluded settlement. They recognized the challenges and potential dangers of integrating into society after so many years of isolation. Fear of losing their identity, their values, and their way of life loomed large in their minds. However, Dmitri's experience sparked a desire for change within the family. They began to question whether their way of life was truly sustainable in the long term. Concerns about limited resources, the lack of medical facilities, and the potential dangers of complete isolation started to take hold. As the years went by, the Lykov family continued to thrive in their secluded settlement. Despite the challenges they faced, they found strength in their unity, their connection to nature, and their determination to preserve their way of life. Their story serves as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community in the face of adversity. Though the Lykov family chose to remain hidden from the world, their story has now become known across Russia and much of Europe. This tale of survival, resilience, and adaptation is a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit. As we reflect on their extraordinary journey, we are reminded of the power of family bonds, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of respecting the choices of those who live differently than us. The Lykov family's story is a beacon of hope, demonstrating that even in the most challenging circumstances, life can endure and thrive. What do you think about the Lykov family? Do you think you could survive in such conditions? Let me know your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. There are many ways that chaos manifests in our everyday lives, from natural disasters to economic crashes. But there's also hidden patterns of chaos all around us that we don't always notice. Take highway traffic, for instance. It can often feel like the very definition of chaos. Cars weaving between lanes, brake lights flashing, horns honking, people screaming at each other. And yet, out of this apparent pandemonium emerges an eerie sort of order. We might call it phantom traffic jams. You've definitely seen these stop-and-go waves of traffic when driving, or maybe even more fun, flying. There's nothing backing up traffic at the moment, but still cars inch forward, then suddenly stop, then inch forward again. At times like these, your first instinct is probably to blame someone else. Some careless driver in front of you who slammed on their brakes for no good reason. You might be right, but there's another explanation, one that surprised researchers who study how traffic flows. Most of the time, these stop-and-go waves aren't caused by a single driver's misbehavior. Instead, they arise from collective behavior, a kind of many-body problem in which the actions of each individual car collectively produce a seemingly chaotic pattern. To find out what causes these phantom traffic jams, researchers turn to a tool that scientists use to study everything from bird flocks to financial markets to, yes, highway traffic. Agent-based modeling. Rather than trying to model the overall behavior of the system, agent-based models simulate individual agents and let their interactions produce an overall behavior. In the case of traffic, this means simulating individual cars rather than the flow of traffic as a whole. With this approach, researchers can test hypotheses about what causes the phantom traffic jams. Let's say you're on a highway and you slam on your brakes because the person in front of you just cut off a semi-truck. The car behind you might hit their brakes too, either because they're programmed to do so or because they're responding to the collision warning in their car. If the person behind them does the same, you get a wave of cars braking in succession. But if those drivers all maintain a small safe distance from the car in front of them, those waves can pile up and turn into stop and go traffic. Now, in real life, individual drivers aren't necessarily slamming on the brakes for no good reason. They're just doing what they're supposed to. Maybe they're following too closely, or maybe they're programmed to brake quickly when necessary. In fact, modern cars come equipped with anti-lock braking systems and electronic stability control that help drivers avoid skids and maintain control over their vehicles. So, as soon as a driver slams on the brakes, nearby cars start swerving and cutting in and out of lanes, which makes the situation worse. In 2019, researchers from the University of Michigan used agent-based modeling to identify the minimum number of drivers needed to create these waves of stop-and-go traffic. To their surprise, it was only 2 cars. As long as one driver was programmed to keep a safe distance from the vehicle in front of them, but not so much that they couldn't hit the brakes quickly enough, and the other was programmed to follow too closely, then the second car would trigger the first car's brakes and create a chain reaction. In other words, the combination of defensive and aggressive driving creates this chaos. But this model didn't explain why sometimes the stop-and-go traffic goes on for miles and miles. To dig deeper, researchers turned to a different modeling environment, a supercomputer called the High Performance Computing Center at the University of Stuttgart. With this setup, they could run thousands of simulations at once, testing lots of variables to see what happens. This revealed that these longer-lasting traffic jams happen when drivers are overly cautious, meaning they keep a larger-than-usual safe distance from the vehicle in front of them. In their simulations, when drivers kept a distance of just 1 car length away from the vehicle in front of them, traffic flowed smoothly. But when they increased the distance to 3 or 4 car lengths, the traffic jammed up. What's going on? Well, in this scenario, the overly cautious driver doesn't slam on their brakes when the car in front of them does. But if enough drivers in front of them slam on their brakes, the string of brake lights eventually convinces them to hit the brakes too, producing a shockwave of traffic that piles up behind them. The researchers found that this shockwave can keep propagating backwards, jamming up traffic for miles. The thing is, though, that adding more cars to the simulation didn't make things worse. In fact, it made them better. That's because with more cars, there were more opportunities for the overly cautious drivers to safely change lanes and get around the cars that were slowing them down. That is, until they started changing lanes aggressively. When researchers added lane changing to their model, they found that the most aggressive drivers were the worst. These were the drivers who changed lanes as soon as they saw a car in front of them slam on their brakes, whether or not they needed to. As you might imagine, this meant that the cars that moved into the new lane weren't always expecting the traffic jam that had formed there, and they slammed on their brakes, once again causing a new shock wave to ripple back down the road. And thus, these researchers were able to show that phantom traffic jams arise when overly cautious drivers interact with aggressive drivers in a specific way. But, as with most agent-based models, the results depend on the rules that govern individual agents. Here, the rules describe how drivers brake, accelerate, and change lanes. But in real life, drivers don't follow hard and fast rules. They're driven by heuristics, educated guesses, and mental rules of thumb that often fail to capture the nuances of the road. For instance, a driver might normally maintain a safe distance from the car in front of them, but decide to drive more aggressively when they're running late or defensively when the weather takes a turn. In reality, the rules governing individual drivers are constantly evolving, which means that phantom traffic jams could be caused by different combinations of drivers or different interactions between them. Plus, there are plenty of other factors that influence traffic flow, from the shape of the road to the speed limit to the number of lanes. So, while agent-based modeling can tell us a lot about the possible causes of phantom traffic jams, it can't tell us exactly what's causing them in any particular instance. That requires the kind of large-scale data collection that comes with a well-functioning society. Speaking of which, thanks to all of you for functioning so well as viewers and subscribers. If you want to keep functioning, you know what to do. And hey, here's a bonus, something you can share with your friends, fellow drivers. The next time you're stuck in traffic, have them look at the car in front of them and the car ahead of that one. If the driver in the car in front of them is keeping a safe distance from the car in front of that, it's probably best if they keep their distance from the car in front of them. Otherwise, they might end up triggering a stop-and-go wave of traffic. I'm at a lunar research lab here in Hawaii. Behind me is a 24-foot diameter dish. It's used to communicate with spacecraft and satellites. And for the last 2 weeks, it's been searching the moon for a magnetic signature. The moon that we know today has no global magnetic field. But new research suggests that it did have one in the past. So what happened? Did something whack it into a magnetic pole vault? Or is there another explanation? Let's get to the bottom of this. There are 4 bodies in our solar system that have magnetic fields: Mercury, Earth, Jupiter, and Neptune. All are rotating, which generates a magnetic field through a process called the dynamo effect. That means your spin-doctoring space rock could also have once been a dynamo. But if it was, where's its magnetic field now? Here are some clues. First, there are magnetic minerals on the moon's surface. They're called anorthosite and gabbro. These rocks are rich in the magnetic mineral ilmenite, which forms only in the presence of a magnetic field. If they were once part of a larger magnetic structure, we should see evidence of magnetic alignment within them. So scientists have gone looking for that. Now, these samples came from NASA's robotic mission to the moon in the 1970s. It was called the Lunar Roving. Or the Lunar Sample Return, I don't know. The point is, it brought back the first moon rocks since the 1972 Apollo missions. In 2020, researchers studied the composition and magnetic properties of 38 of these samples. They found that while some of the samples show signs of ancient magnetism, others don't. This tells us that the moon's magnetic field, if it existed, didn't last very long, because the magnetic minerals would have aligned themselves with the magnetic north and south poles, but only if the field was strong enough and long-lived enough. Otherwise, random things like cosmic rays would have scrambled their internal magnetic structure. So any paleomagnetism preserved in these rocks must be really ancient. What's more, the magnetic signatures in different samples vary significantly, suggesting that whatever the Moon's magnetic field once was, it was complicated. And what about its size? Well, given the Moon's distance from Earth, we can calculate what strength of magnetic field would have been required to align those minerals. Researchers estimated that the Moon's ancient field was probably around 10 times stronger than Earth's current field, though it could have been as much as 100 times stronger. That's pretty big. So, when might the Moon have lost its magnetic mojo? One clue comes from craters. Craters tell us the age of the lunar surface. And the older the surface, the more likely it's going to have retained its magnetic signature. For example, the lunar highlands are heavily cratered, so they're old and therefore record ancient magnetism. On the other hand, the lunar maria, or sea, are smooth and less cratered, meaning they're relatively young and show little sign of ancient magnetism. Now, not all mare are created equal. Scientists refer to them as either type 1 or type 2. Type 1 are the oldest, and type 2 are younger and more extensive. Some researchers hypothesize that the Moon's magnetic field disappeared soon after the formation of the Maria, perhaps around 3 billion years ago. But while lunar rocks are giving up some secrets, they're keeping others close to the chest. You see, rocks are made of lots of different elements. When you heat them up, they melt into a gooey lava. Then, as they cool, they solidify into a crystalline structure, and the specific arrangement of atoms in that crystal lattice determines the magnetic properties of the resulting rock. Unfortunately, that process, called crystallization, is complex and hard to study. Not only do different elements behave differently, but the conditions under which crystallization occurs, including temperature, pressure, and the rate at which the molten rock cools, all influence the end result. There isn't just one way that rocks turn into magnets. To figure out what happened to the Moon's magnetic field, scientists need to understand how these factors affected crystallization and magnetic alignment in the Moon's ancient rocks. And that requires experiments like the one being conducted by the lab that I'm visiting. Their hope is to recreate the conditions under which the Moon formed and cooled in order to better understand what happened to its magnetic field. The main part of this experiment is this massive furnace here. It can heat samples up to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 1000 degrees Celsius. At these high temperatures, the elements contained in the lunar samples will melt together into a liquid magma. The team will then cool the magma down slowly to mimic the cooling of the Moon over billions of years. During the crystallization phase, they'll measure the magnetic properties of the solidifying material. Depending on the chemical makeup of each sample, the crystallization process may take anywhere from a few hours to several days. After that, the team will analyze the resulting magnetic signatures to see how well they align. If they find that certain compositions are more likely to retain imprints of a magnetic field, they'll know that those compositions were likely exposed to one. And the team is making excellent progress. They've already completed experiments on 3 different samples. So far, they've found that crystallization plays a big role in determining whether a rock becomes magnetic. Now, they're going to analyze the results and try to piece together the history of the Moon's magnetic field. Another hint comes from computer models that simulate the entire Moon. Scientists have developed these models to describe the Moon's thermal evolution, how its interior has cooled over time. They can use these models to estimate how quickly the Moon's core would have had to rotate to generate a magnetic field. And, according to their calculations, the Moon's dynamo would have had to rotate around 3 times faster than Earth's core does today to produce the magnetic field strengths that we observe in the lunar rocks. Okay, so the Moon had a magnetic field, and it was strong. But what happened to it? There are 2 competing theories. The first is the core decay model. Basically, the dynamo in the Moon's core powered a magnetic field until something changed in its structure, such as a phase transition in which parts of the core turned from liquid to solid. That would have disrupted the flow of electricity that generated the magnetic field, shutting the dynamo off. In the end, the core would have slowed and the magnetic field would have dissipated. The other possibility is the impact hypothesis. Maybe something slammed into the moon and knocked its core off its axis. If that sounds familiar, it's because the giant impact hypothesis describes how the Earth-Moon system formed. According to this model, the young Earth was struck by a Mars-sized planet. Most of the impactor's material merged with the Earth, but some was flung into orbit. Over time, that debris coalesced to form the Moon. If true, that giant impact would have knocked the Moon's core off kilter, disrupting the dynamo effect and turning off its magnetic field. Which theory is right? Well, there's no consensus yet. The core decay model seems to explain the Moon's magnetic history better, but it depends on details of the crystallization experiments. As for the giant impact hypothesis, while it explains the sudden loss of a magnetic field, it doesn't explain why the Moon's core would suddenly start rotating faster. That said, this isn't the end of the story. New data may emerge pointing to another cause or even refining these models. After all, the Moon is still full of surprises. Just ask the people whose backyard stargazing revealed water on the Moon's surface. So, next time you look up at the Moon, keep in mind that it may have once been a dynamo. It just goes to show that our closest neighbor is still full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. So, thank you for watching this SCI Show video, and thank you to the lab for helping us make it. It's been nearly 100 years since we first looked up at the stars and realized that we are not alone. We have potentially trillions of copies of Earth out there just waiting to be found. And yet, despite all our technology, all our radio telescopes pointed heavenward, we still haven't heard so much as a peep from any extraterrestrial civilizations. This is what scientists call the Great Silence, or more technically the Fermi Paradox, and it has left many wondering, where are they? In this video, we're going to look at some of the possible explanations for why we haven't made contact with aliens yet, from the idea that we're just too early for them to reach out to us to the possibility that they've already visited Earth and decided we're just not worth bothering with. So sit back, relax, and get ready to find out why we haven't met aliens yet. Or have we? If you're new here, welcome to my channel, where we explore the greatest mysteries of our universe. Join me on my quest to uncover the answers to the unknown by subscribing for weekly videos and joining our awesome community. Let's get started. First things first, let's talk about the Fermi Paradox itself. Named after the Italian physicist Enrico Fermi, who first brought up the argument in 1950, this paradox highlights the contradiction between the high probability of extraterrestrial life existing and the fact that we haven't found or heard from any aliens yet. There are billions of Earth-like planets out there in the Milky Way galaxy, and even if only one of them had life on it, we should have found some kind of evidence by now, right? Well, according to Fermi's logic, he reasoned that given enough time and an infinite number of planets, it was almost certain that life would arise again and again. And sooner or later, some of those civilizations would reach out into space and make contact with other worlds. But we haven't heard from any aliens yet. So where are they? Well, there are a few possible explanations for this great silence. First off, we could be truly alone in the universe. Life might be incredibly rare, and we really could be the only ones out here. If that's the case, then there's no one to call. Or maybe we are not alone, but there aren't any advanced civilizations out there. Perhaps every civilization tends to destroy itself before it can become interstellar. After all, we have come close to destroying ourselves several times throughout our history, with wars and environmental disasters always looming around the corner. Maybe the universe has a funny way of ensuring that civilizations don't get too big for their britches. Another explanation is that maybe they're out there, but we're just not listening in the right way. Maybe they're trying to contact us and we're just not picking up their signals. SETI scientists are actively searching for signs of intelligent life in the universe using radio telescopes like the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, ALLEN Telescope Array. However, these telescopes are only capable of detecting radio waves, which means that if aliens are trying to communicate using a different part of the electromagnetic spectrum, such as infrared light, we might be missing their calls. Or maybe they're trying to contact us in person rather than through radio waves. And that brings us to another intriguing possibility. Maybe they've already visited Earth. In fact, there are a lot of people who believe that they have. Conspiracies abound regarding the existence of UFOs and alien cover-ups by the government. While there is no concrete evidence to support these claims, it does make you wonder if we are truly alone in the universe. If aliens have managed to visit Earth, then that suggests that they have some pretty advanced technology. It would also mean that they are capable of traveling between star systems, which is no easy feat. The nearest star system to ours is Alpha Centauri, which is about 437 light-years away. Even if aliens were to develop a spaceship that could travel at half the speed of light, it would still take over 8 years to get there. And that doesn't even account for the time it would take to refuel or repair the ship along the way. Needless to say, interstellar travel is extremely difficult, which makes it all the more impressive if aliens have managed to do it. Okay, so maybe we're just not listening in the right way, or maybe they're trying to contact us in a way that we just don't understand. But there are two more possibilities that we should discuss. Maybe we are just too early for them to contact us, or maybe we are too late. According to astronomer and author David Kipping, we might simply be too early in the cosmic conversation for aliens to reach out. In his book, Living in the Age of Intelligent Machines, he argues that civilizations don't tend to become spacefaring until they have developed some form of artificial intelligence. He believes that AI is a necessary step in the evolution of any civilization, because it allows for the automation of tasks which frees up humans to pursue other endeavors. However, this also means that there is a significant gap in time between the development of AI and the ability to travel to other star systems. According to Kipping, it could take thousands of years to develop the technology necessary for interstellar travel once AI has been developed, and that's just on the low end. Other estimates put the timescale for developing this technology at hundreds of thousands of years. If that's the case, then we are definitely too early for aliens to be knocking on our doors. After all, we've only developed artificial intelligence in the last few decades. It's likely going to be a very long time before we see anything close to an alien civilization due to this technological gap. On the other hand, we could be too late. According to this theory, most civilizations tend to destroy themselves before they can achieve interstellar travel. As we mentioned earlier, civilizations that reach a certain level of technological advancement often face challenges such as wars and environmental disasters that threaten their very existence. For example, the development of nuclear weapons has led to concerns about mutually assured destruction, which has spurred efforts towards disarmament and peace. Likewise, climate change poses a serious threat to human civilization and requires global cooperation to mitigate its effects. If these challenges are not overcome, then it is possible that humanity could face its own extinction. It is conceivable that something similar has happened to other civilizations throughout history, preventing them from reaching the stars. After all, we have seen how quickly civilizations can rise and fall throughout history. For example, the Mayan civilization declined rapidly after centuries of warfare and environmental degradation. Similarly, the Bronze Age collapse saw the downfall of several civilizations in Europe, Asia, and Africa due to a combination of factors including climate change, overgrazing, and natural disasters. If civilizations are so fragile, then it is possible that none will ever reach the stage of interstellar travel. Maybe we are the last ones standing, and that is why we haven't heard from any aliens yet. So, what do you think? Are we truly alone in the universe, or are there other civilizations out there that we just haven't found yet? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of finding things, and now let's get back to the video. Of course, it is also possible that none of these explanations are correct and that we are truly alone in the universe. However, I find this to be a bit unlikely given the sheer size of the universe and the number of planets out there. There are billions upon billions of planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and it is estimated that there are around 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. Even if life only arises by chance on one planet out of every trillion, that still leaves us with millions of potential homes for life. Given the vastness of the universe and the number of planets out there, it seems highly unlikely that we are the only ones. However, while we may not be alone, we may still be too early for contact. As we discussed earlier, it could take thousands or even millions of years for a civilization to reach the point where they can travel to other star systems. So we may simply have to wait a while longer before we hear from anyone else. But that doesn't mean we should stop looking. In fact, it is because of the possibility of life out there that makes the search for extraterrestrial intelligence so important. If we can find life elsewhere in the universe, it would revolutionize our understanding of the cosmos. It would also raise a lot of philosophical questions about the nature of life, the universe, and everything. As Carl Sagan said, we're all made of star stuff. The atoms that make up our bodies were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. We are literally connected to the universe in a way that we are not yet fully aware of. By searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, we are searching for a part of ourselves that is out there among the stars. We may not have heard from them yet, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. One day, we will find life elsewhere in the universe, and when we do, it will change our world forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more updates on all things space. Also, check out this video next. There are many famous mysteries that continue to baffle scientists even today. One such mystery is the Hessdalen lights, a set of strange glowing lights that have been appearing in a remote valley in Norway since the 1930s. And while there have been several theories put forth to explain these mysterious lights, we still don't know what they are. Here's everything you need to know about this unexplained phenomenon. The Hessdalen lights are a collection of strange floating orbs of light that appear above the Hessdalen Valley in the eastern part of Norway. The lights were first reported by local residents in the 1930s, but they had gone unnoticed for hundreds of years before that. They typically appear as bright spheres ranging from white to orange in color and are seen floating across the night sky at varying heights above the ground. The lights can last anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes and are often accompanied by a strange silence that seems to blanket the area. This makes the lights even more eerie and unsettling to those who witness them. While the lights themselves are strange enough, what makes them even more mysterious is that they seem to follow a strange pattern. They tend to appear in the same locations over and over again, and they also seem to be connected to certain weather conditions. For example, the lights are most commonly seen during the winter months when the temperature is below freezing and there is high humidity in the air. They are also more likely to appear on clear nights with little to no wind. All of these factors suggest that the lights may be caused by some kind of physical phenomenon, but so far scientists have been unable to figure out what that could be. Because of this, there have been all sorts of theories proposed to try and explain the Hessdalen lights. The first theory is that the lights are caused by some kind of unusual geological activity. The Hessdalen Valley is located near a major fault line, and it is possible that the lights are caused by electrical charges being released from the Earth as the tectonic plates shift. Another theory is that the lights are caused by buildup of methane gas in the valley. Methane is a flammable gas that is produced by the decay of organic matter, and it is possible that the gas has become trapped in the valley. When it is released, it can form a ball of fire or a floating orb of light. A third theory is that the lights are caused by a rare type of ice crystal. These ice crystals are hexagonal in shape and can form under certain conditions in the atmosphere. As they reflect the light from the moon and stars, they can create an optical illusion that appears as a glowing orb of light. However, none of these theories have been able to fully explain the Hessdalen lights. Scientists have conducted numerous studies of the area and have collected a lot of data, but they still don't know what is causing the lights. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Hessdalen lights is that they seem to follow a cyclic pattern, appearing every 12 to 13 years in waves. The first wave of sightings occurred in the 1930s, and then again in the 1940s and 50s, followed by another wave in the late 1960s and early 70s. The most recent wave began in 2000 and is still continuing today. This cyclic pattern suggests that the lights may be caused by some kind of astronomical event that occurs every 12 to 13 years. But so far, astronomers have been unable to identify any such event. In an effort to get to the bottom of this mystery, a team of scientists from the University of Oslo set up a research station in the Hessdalen Valley in 2002. The team consisted of astronomers, physicists, and geologists who were all eager to collect data on the lights and hopefully solve the mystery. They used various instruments to measure things such as the light intensity, color, and duration of the lights. They also collected data on the weather conditions and the seismic activity in the area. While the team was able to collect a lot of data, they were unable to come up with a definitive explanation for the lights. However, they did make some interesting discoveries. For example, they found that the lights seem to be correlated with auroras, which are caused by charged particles from the sun interacting with the Earth's atmosphere. This correlation suggests that the Hessdalen lights may also be caused by some kind of solar activity. In addition, the team was able to capture images of the lights using a special camera that was sensitive to infrared radiation. The images revealed that the lights had a temperature of around 2000 degrees Celsius, which is extremely hot. All of this data was able to shed some light on the mystery, but it still left more questions than answers. Scientists continue to be baffled by the Hessdalen lights, and there is still no solid explanation for what causes them. Some researchers believe that the lights are caused by a combination of factors, including the Earth's magnetic field, the solar activity, and the atmospheric conditions in the valley. Others believe that the lights may be caused by a completely unknown phenomenon that we do not yet understand. Whatever the cause may be, the Hessdalen lights remain a truly mysterious and fascinating phenomenon that continues to captivate scientists and the public alike. The Hessdalen lights have been the subject of intense scientific scrutiny, but so far no one has been able to explain them. There are several theories, but none are widely accepted. Some scientists believe that the lights may be caused by a buildup of static electricity in the valley, while others think they could be caused by an unknown type of particle. Still, others speculate that the lights may not be physical phenomena at all, but rather a form of mass hysteria. The Hessdalen lights have been witnessed by thousands of people over the years and have been captured on camera numerous times. Despite this, there is very little evidence to support any of the theories about their cause. In fact, the only physical evidence that has ever been recovered from the site are some small stones that were allegedly melted by the heat of the lights. However, this evidence is disputed, and there is no way to say for sure what caused the melting of the stones. One of the most controversial theories is that the lights are caused by extraterrestrial activity. Proponents of this theory believe that the lights may be caused by alien spacecraft that are visiting the area. However, there is no evidence to support this claim, and it is generally dismissed by the scientific community. Despite the lack of evidence, some people are still convinced that the lights are real and that they are hiding something. Conspiracy theorists believe that the government is covering up the truth about the lights and that they are actually evidence of a UFO. However, there is no evidence to support these claims, and they are generally considered to be unfounded. In recent years, the Hessdalen lights have become a popular tourist attraction. People from all over the world come to the small town of Hessdalen in Norway hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious lights. The town has capitalized on the mystery by offering tours and other activities related to the lights. However, despite the best efforts of scientists and conspiracy theorists, the Hessdalen lights remain a complete mystery. We may never know what causes them, but that doesn't stop us from marveling at their beauty and trying to understand them. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments below if you find this interesting. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
This jellyfish is immortal, and scientists just discovered why. This is the Torotopsis dohrnii, aka the immortal jellyfish. It's the only known species that can revert to its youthful stage instead of dying, and it does this by turning back time at the cellular level. As it ages, it begins to lose its ability to move, eat, and reproduce. But luckily for it, there's an alternative. If conditions are right, it can basically hit replay. It turns into a blob again, restarting its life cycle from scratch. And scientists think they may have figured out how it does this. They found that the jellyfish has a gene called T-Dorny, which, when activated, allows the jellyfish to basically become a baby again. And while this discovery won't help us humans live forever, it does give us hope that one day we may be able to unlock the secrets of eternal life. Because if this little jellyfish can do it, so can we.
The Devil's Kettle Waterfall. I recently discovered this video, and ever since then, this waterfall has been haunting my dreams. It is a Minnesota waterfall located near the small town of Lutsen, and what makes it so unique is that one side of the falls seemingly disappears into thin air. There is no trace of it anywhere to be found. The water simply vanishes underground. For hundreds of years, people have come up with all sorts of theories to try and explain the phenomenon. But in reality, we still don't know what happens to the water after it passes over the falls. Some believe that it creates a sinkhole and ends up in a cave somewhere deep below ground. Others think it flows back up into the river above, or even further down the river. Maybe it even disappears into another dimension, or perhaps it's aliens. That's always a fun one. Whatever the case may be, it's definitely a sight to behold. So here are some amazing videos and pictures of this truly mysterious waterfall. We begin with a time lapse of the waterfall. It just keeps going and going and going. This was shot by drone and it's about 45 seconds long. The first 30 seconds shows the section of the waterfall that actually hits the ground. Then, for the next 15 seconds, we see nothing but thin air. Where in the world could all of that water be going? This video is interesting because it shows several different perspectives of the falls. We get shots from the ground looking up, from the top looking down, and even from the river below looking up. This is the best way to get a sense of just how tall these falls are. And they really aren't all that high, only about 75 feet, or 23 meters tall. They're much wider than they are tall. Here you can see someone standing right at the base of the falls to give you a better idea of their height. Just to put it another way, if you were to drop a bowling ball from the top of these falls, it would hit the ground at a speed of over 160 miles per hour, more than fast enough to seriously injure or even kill someone. Here's a video that begins with a beautiful view of the river flowing through the trees. After about 30 seconds, we arrive at the waterfall. And again, we get another great perspective as we look down from the top of the falls. The water doesn't actually go off the edge, but instead comes to a pretty abrupt stop about halfway down. This video is actually an aerial tramway ride to the top of the falls, so we get a wonderful view of the surrounding forest. Eventually, the falls themselves come into view and we see the mist rising up into the air. Shortly thereafter, we get a nice overhead view of the entire thing. And while it doesn't show us exactly where the water goes, it does give us a good idea of just how massive this waterfall is. And now we have a gorgeous drone flyover. As the camera flies toward the falls, the sound of rushing water gradually gets louder and louder. And then, finally, we can see the spray from the falls and the trees surrounding it. At the end, we hear the splash of the water hitting the ground below. The waterfall is located within the Superior National Forest, so there are plenty of opportunities for hiking and camping. In fact, right behind me is a campground, so if you want to stay even closer, that's an option too. However, I wouldn't recommend it. This is due to a little thing called bear country. According to the U.S. Forest Service, black bears are common in this area. And while they typically avoid humans, it's always important to take precautions. For example, You should never leave food unattended or keep it in your tent. If you do, well, this might be what happens. Thankfully, the human in this situation got away unharmed. But that's not always the case. Every year, dozens of people are injured or even killed by bears in North America alone. So please remember to be bear aware. This video comes from a guy who was kayaking on the river. He says that he was paddling along and then came around a bend in the river, and the next thing he knew, he was staring right at the falls. Now, in addition to the waterfall, there are also caves in this area. In fact, here's a guy exploring one of them. These caves are full of ice and snow, even in the summer. And that's because the entrance faces north. Caves like these are called vertical ice caves, and they're only accessible during the winter months. However, if you want to explore one for yourself, you probably shouldn't. That's because these caves are very dangerous. As you can see, the ceilings are prone to collapsing, and it's quite easy to get lost inside. Now, there are many legends and myths surrounding this waterfall. According to one story, two lovers named Gitche Manitou and Wawa were separated by a grumpy old man. Gitche Manitou was a giant who lived on the north side of the falls, and Wawa was a beautiful young woman who lived on the south side. One day, the two were out gathering berries when they saw each other across the river. They fell in love, but their happiness was short-lived. You see, an evil wood industry tycoon named Old Man Strong had set his sights on Wawa. He demanded that her father give him Wawa's hand in marriage or else he would destroy the forest. The father reluctantly agreed, and on the day of the wedding, Gitche Manitou became furious. He climbed to the top of the highest mountain and threw rocks into the river below. The rocks created a dam which raised the water level and formed a waterfall. Gitche Manitou then jumped into the river and disappeared. Only his footprints can be seen on the rocks today. Wawa's father was so grateful for Gitche Manitou's sacrifice that he gave him his daughter's hand in marriage, and that's why to this day the waterfall is called Gitche Manitou Falls. Now, whatever the truth may be, there's no denying that this is a beautiful part of Minnesota. The waterfall is surrounded by lush green trees, and the nearby caves are a sight to behold. In fact, there's one cave not too far away that's open to the public. It's called the High Falls Cave, and it's located just a short walk from the parking lot. You can explore the cave on your own or take a guided tour. And while you won't find anything too crazy in there, it's still a fun way to spend an afternoon. But now it's time for you to tell me what you think. What do you think happens to the water after it passes over the falls? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you next time. A haunting, lonely sound echoing through the ocean depths. It was so loud that even whales were startled by it. But what could have made such a noise? This is the sound that has never been explained. In 1997, scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration were recording sounds in the Pacific Ocean for their regularly scheduled project called the Acoustic Recording of Underwater Sound in the Pacific. They had been doing this work since 1994, and it was pretty routine. That's why, when they listened back to the tapes from this particular day, they were all shocked to hear a sound so powerful and unusual that it forced them to start the investigation all over again. They named the sound the bloop. And it was an extremely low-frequency sound. In fact, it was the lowest frequency sound ever recorded in the ocean at the time. It was also louder than a blue whale call, which can reach 188 decibels. For comparison, a jet engine is about 150 decibels. That means that if you stood next to a jet engine, it would be 8 times quieter than the bloop. You might be wondering, how do you measure the volume of an underwater sound? It's not like you can just put a decibel meter in the water. For this, scientists use hydrophones, which are just underwater microphones. And these hydrophones can pick up extremely faint noises, and then these noises are converted into a waveform that humans can hear. It turns out that the bloop was 232 decibels. To make it clearer, the bloop is 30 decibels louder than a rocket launch. But that wasn't all that made the bloop so special. What really caught the researchers off guard was its origin. As we said before, the team was expecting to hear some routine background noises of the ocean, and even though the bloop was created by something that was 1,800 meters under the ocean surface, it was still clearly audible. So how could such a powerful sound be created at such a depth? To answer this question, scientists went back to the very beginning and started investigating old recordings. They wanted to see if they could find something similar in previous recordings, and lo and behold, they found it. In 1994, during one of their first expeditions, they actually recorded the same sound, but it was much quieter. When they compared the two recordings, they realized that the second one was literally 10 times louder than the first. But besides that, they didn't really find any differences between the two sounds. So what did they have to do? Scientists set out to find the source of the noise once and for all. Their first assumption was that the noise came from a large crack in the seabed. And it made sense because such a crack could create a kind of megaphone effect, amplifying the sound. Plus, if the crack kept opening up over time, it would explain why the bloop got so much louder in just 3 years. But when they looked into the matter further, they realized that there were no recent earthquakes or volcanic eruptions in the area, and if there had been, they would have been recorded by the local seismic monitoring stations. So the seabed was ruled out as a possible source. But there was another place where the sound could have come from: the ocean floor. In this part of the Pacific Ocean, the ocean floor rises to within 150 meters of the surface, creating a canyon wall. It could very well be that whatever was making the noise was near this wall, and that is why it was so hard to detect. If the source was sitting inside the canyon, it would be almost impossible to find. With that theory in mind, scientists deployed more hydrophones to the bottom of the canyon. Finally, they would be able to capture the sound at its source and figure out exactly what was making it. But when they listened to the recordings, they heard nothing. The bottom line was that whatever made the noise was gone. At this point, scientists had two theories on what could have caused the bloop. One of them was some kind of submarine landslide. Landslides can happen underwater, too, and they can be quite big. Just take a look at this one. It's definitely not what you expected to see under the ocean, is it? But landslides usually don't travel far under the water surface, let alone 1,800 meters. And even if it did, it wouldn't necessarily produce such a pure tone. And remember, this wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't like the bloop just happened once and then disappeared. It happened repeatedly every few months. Something was making the sound on purpose. So what else could it be? An iceberg? Well, icebergs tend to make cracking sounds as they move, but those sounds are usually high-pitched and not very long-lasting. Another possibility was marine mammals, but none of the known marine mammals make sounds at such a low frequency. Blue whales, the largest animals on planet Earth, communicate by emitting low-frequency sounds to attract mates and defend their territory. Their calls can travel thousands of kilometers underwater. But the bloop wasn't just a single pulse like a whale call. It was a long, drawn-out moan, like a whale song. But even though it lasted only 5 seconds, it was hundreds of times louder than a blue whale call. Other marine mammals were ruled out because their sounds couldn't possibly travel that far. Also, the source of the sound stayed in the same place for months. If it was a whale, it would have moved away long ago. So it wasn't an iceberg, or a whale, or any other known animal. What else could it be? How about an alien spaceship? We know that aliens love exploring our oceans. Just take a look at this supposed photo of an alien submarine captured off the coast of South Africa in 2020. Or how about this bizarre creature that was washed ashore in Australia in 2017? It looked like a metal tube with a zipper, and many people believe that it was a part of an alien ship. Or maybe the bloop is just a cover-up, and the government is hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life. Well, probably not. At this point, scientists were absolutely baffled. The pressure was on because they needed to present their findings to the public. It was one thing to record strange sounds in the ocean, and it was another to admit that they couldn't identify them. And so scientists had to admit defeat and say that they had no idea what the bloop was. This led to a lot of speculation online. people started talking about everything from kraken to submarines to space aliens. The bloop became a part of internet culture and memes. And to this day, people are trying to figure out what the bloop was. So, what's the verdict? Could it really be that scientists are just ignoring obvious signs of extraterrestrial life? Maybe, but maybe the bloop doesn't have anything to do with aliens. Even though the noise was loud enough to shake the ocean floor, it actually didn't produce much energy. The sound was so pure that it barely affected the surrounding environment. So it very well could be that we're just misinterpreting the data. We tend to look for patterns, even if they aren't really there. Take a look at this famous example. People saw a face in this cheese, but really there wasn't one. It was just a trick of the light. Of course, you could say that it looks exactly like a face, but if you spent the last 10 years staring at pieces of cheese, you'd probably see faces in them too. And this is exactly what may have happened to scientists when they were analyzing the bloop. Maybe they just saw what they expected to see. Think about it. Before they listened to the recording, they expected to hear some marine life. So when they heard a low-frequency sound, they immediately thought it was a whale. But what if it wasn't a whale call at all? What if it was just the ocean telling us that there's still so much we do not know about the world? Now check out how to survive an earthquake. Or click this other video instead. It's like a chameleon in the sea, only much weirder. It can expand its skin to fit another animal's shape and even copy its movements. That's not all. Its venom is powerful enough to paralyze prey and mimic their color patterns. And unlike chameleons, the strange master of disguise can impersonate more than just other reptiles. In fact, it can transform itself into a sea creature that's completely different from it. But how does it learn so many disguises? Scientists still don't know. Hi, it's me, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving into the world of the mimic octopus. But before we get into its uncanny abilities, let's talk about what an octopus actually is. Octopuses are mollusks, which means they're related to snails and clams. Like other mollusks, they have a soft body with no bones and are part of a larger group called cephalopods, which also includes squid and cuttlefish. All these animals are famous for their intelligence, complex nervous systems, and remarkable adaptability. They can squeeze through tiny spaces, change color in a blink of an eye, and even solve mazes. Some species can even recognize themselves in the mirror. So when you see an octopus, remember you're looking at a highly intelligent creature capable of some truly amazing things. And one of the most impressive things about them is their ability to impersonate other animals. The mimic octopus is a small octopus found in the coastal waters of the Pacific Ocean, ranging from Japan to Indonesia. It lives in shallow coral reefs and feeds on crustaceans and fish. Its natural habitat is quite simple, but it's also dangerous. There are many predators out there that would love to eat an octopus, such as turtles, sharks, and eels. So the mimic octopus had to come up with a way to defend itself, and it did so by impersonating other animals. Now, you might be wondering why it doesn't just rely on its natural camouflage. Well, it can do that too. It has specialized pigment cells called chromatophores that allow it to change color and texture almost instantly. However, sometimes blending in just isn't enough. That's when the mimic octopus puts on a disguise. For example, when it encounters a sea turtle, it transforms itself into a small fish. It swims in the same way as a fish and even copies the movements of its fins. This fools the turtle into thinking it's just seeing a little fish, not an octopus it could eat. Similarly, if a shark approaches, it impersonates a venomous lionfish. It puffs up its skin to look like the fish's stinging cells and even copies the fish's movements and color pattern. The shark sees the mimic octopus and thinks it's a lionfish, so it swims away. But the mimic octopus doesn't just stop at imitating other animals. It can also impersonate inanimate objects. When threatened by a predator, it turns itself into a leaf or a piece of seaweed and stays still until the danger passes. And it's not just a clever trick. The mimic octopus can actually change its skin texture and color to match the surroundings. This makes it almost invisible to predators and prey alike. You might think that the mimic octopus is just pretending to be something it's not. But that's not true. It actually changes its entire physiology to match its disguise. For example, when it impersonates a sea turtle, it slows down its movements to match the turtle's slow pace. And when it copies a lionfish, it speeds up its movements to match the fish's fast pace. This kind of transformation requires a lot of energy, but the mimic octopus manages to pull it off by slowing down its metabolism. This slows down its breathing and reduces the amount of oxygen it needs, allowing it to stay in its disguise for longer. One of the most amazing things about the mimic octopus is its ability to impersonate other animals so well. It can even fool scientists who study it in the lab. Researchers have noticed that the mimic octopus seems to be able to memorize the appearance and behavior of other animals. It can even copy the color patterns of other octopuses. This means that the mimic octopus doesn't just have a set number of disguises. It can actually learn new ones. However, we still don't know how the mimic octopus manages to impersonate other animals so well. We do know that it has a large brain compared to other octopuses. It also has a lot of neurons in its skin cells, which allows it to control the color and texture of its skin very precisely. But we're still working on figuring out exactly how all this works. And it's not just the mimic octopus that's mysterious. Its venom is also a source of wonder. It has special venom-producing cells called cnidocytes. These cells are similar to the stinging cells of jellyfish and other stinging organisms. They contain a venom that can paralyze other animals. This allows the mimic octopus to capture its prey without being eaten itself. And the weird thing is that the mimic octopus can even inject its venom into other animals. It does this by biting them with its beak and then releasing its venom into their wounds. This means that the mimic octopus can poison other animals as well. And that's not all. The mimic octopus can also change the color of its venom. It does this by mixing different pigments with its venom. This allows it to match the color of its surroundings, making it even harder for predators to spot. But despite all these adaptations, the mimic octopus is still vulnerable. It's often hunted by larger fish and mammals, including humans. People eat it in some countries, but it's not a popular food item. It's considered a delicacy in some parts of the world. The mimic octopus is often caught as a bycatch of the fishing industry. This means that it's caught accidentally along with other fish and squid. It's not clear how many mimic octopuses are caught each year, but it's likely that the number is quite high. Despite its popularity in some circles, the mimic octopus is still a relatively unknown creature. We have learned a lot about it in recent years, but there's still much more to discover. One of the biggest challenges in studying the mimic octopus is its elusive nature. It's often difficult to find because it spends most of its time hiding in coral reefs. This makes it hard to observe and collect data on. Another challenge is that the mimic octopus is a very solitary creature. It doesn't live in groups like some other animals. This means that it's even harder to study because we can't observe groups of mimic octopuses in their natural habitat. But even though we have yet to uncover all of the secrets of the mimic octopus, we can be sure that it's one of the most fascinating creatures in the ocean. Its ability to impersonate other animals is truly amazing. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how it does it. It's a reminder that there is still so much to learn about our world and that even the smallest creatures can surprise us. So, the next time you hear about the mimic octopus, remember that it's not just a strange sea creature. It's a highly intelligent, highly adaptable creature that's still full of surprises. Maybe one day we'll even figure out how it impersonates other animals. But until then, we can marvel at the mystery of this amazing creature and be inspired by its ability to adapt and thrive in a constantly changing world. What do you think? How do you think the mimic octopus learns to impersonate other animals? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.